All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome, Michael, back. Thank you, all of you guys, for the support, for being here, for trusting in this adventure of exploration. And again, Michael, I'm so honored to have you here, to have this chance to speak with you, because I resonate not only with the information that you put out in your work, but also with this other spiritual part that underlies it, or that comes together with it, because of course it's the perspective from which you are writing, and I think it gives you a very unique point of view. I'm not sure how many, maybe you're in contact with many of the people that are in your field, of course. I'm not sure how many people have even though many people must be kind of inclined to accept the Vedic stuff, I don't know how many people are actually on a, let's call it, on a spiritual path. So the fact that you bring this to the table, I think, is quite unique.
Well, I think a lot of the researchers in alternative history have some spiritual inclinations. Of course, I prefer to let them speak for themselves, but my experience has been that they do have some kind of leaning in that direction.
Right. I guess having that openness to actually believe in a transcendent part of existence, to believe in, or to even have a connection and a relationship with God, with the universe, with the quantum field, that must be a kind of door halfway open already for accepting the fact that even the material realm has a deeper history than we are currently in the know.
Yeah, for some of them, things like ayahuasca and things like that are part of their spiritual awakening.
Yeah, there is so many different avenues through which one can get into spirituality, but not just for the sake of saying that you're into spirituality, but actually for the fruit of spirituality, which is eventually and hopefully the cessation of suffering, the knowing who you are, and the being able to act and to be in the world from there, kind of like they say, to be in the world but not of the world, to be able to take whatever comes at you from a different perspective, a different lens, not to always, there is suffering in life. we all face it. Inevitably, one time or another, and it tends to come back, and it also tends to originate from us, opposed to our more common understanding that stuff happens to me, and having a spiritual path and having faith, for me personally, has been a liberating thing and an expansive thing in my understanding and my consciousness of knowing, okay, for once this too shall pass, that idea, but also the thing that you're suffering actually starts within you, so you have the power to transform that, however long it might take, however many tries you might need to polish your heart, to accept. In the end, it's a kind of thing of accepting God more completely, but it's just something that's so overwhelming for our small human minds, right? That it does take a lot of, it's not work, but a lot of allowing, a lot of being present with the thing, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we have to ask ourselves if we are experiencing some difficulty or some kind of suffering, we have to ask ourselves, well, why is it that I feel uncomfortable about this? And I think the answer is that on some deep level, we have an understanding that we're not meant to be suffering. We're not meant to be under the influence of destructive time, which causes everything material eventually to be destroyed, whether it's our material body or some material thing we own, like an automobile, or some material arrangement like an empire or a nation. It's all going to be destroyed in the course of time. And unless on some very deep level we had some understanding that we are not meant for that, we are eternal beings, we are meant for pleasure, we are meant to experience happiness, and we also struggle against ignorance. We don't know what we need to know to survive in this world or make progress. So originally, I think the reason why we're dissatisfied with that we feel uncomfortable, is that we understand on some deep level that we're meant to be eternal, full of knowledge, and full of enjoyment. Sat Chit Ananda, it's described in the Vedas. Sat means eternal existence. Chit means knowledge, full of knowledge. Ananda means full of enjoyment. So I think we all sense on some level that that's what we're meant for. But now we find ourselves in a position where we feel threatened by the passage of time, that it's taking things away from us, that it's, our bodies are deteriorating with the passage of years, unless one happens to be quite young and everything is still growing and functioning very nicely. But even then, people experience difficulties. So I think that opportunity is there to achieve that platform. And that's why I consider this universe and our human life in it to be an educational opportunity. It's like we're in a school. And either we can continue on the platform of everything being temporary, full of ignorance and illusion, and full of different kinds of difficulties and sufferings and pains, or we can educate ourselves about our real nature, which is really beyond all that. So that's how I tend to see things.
So we're starting to get some beautiful hot air and sounds of rain and storm here. We're in the in spring, and it's starting to get kind of like it's about to rain. So I'm going to need just one moment. I'm going to pause the conversation for a moment. I need to bring something that's outside, before it gets all wet. So I'll be right back. Okay, Michael?
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm back. Thank you, Michael, for the wait. The good thing is I got everything in time. And the better thing is we might get some interesting thunderstorm and background music from nature.
I think I hear a little bit of it.
Yeah. The only one thing I wasn't able to bring in was the cat. So I guess she's not going to show up in this episode, and she might be on the window in a few minutes asking to get in. So we'll see what happens then. But we were speaking about this idea of Satchitananda, this knowing within us of, I don't know if the word is that, not deserving suffering, because there is, of course, growth within the suffering itself. So there's again that duality or that paradox.
Yeah.
But of course, we do understand, I've always thought about this, like, why do we think bad things are bad? Like, why is there this knowledge within us that, oh, this thing that, or this, let's say for now, this thing that is making me feel uncomfortable, why do I understand that I should kind of move away from that, right? Kind of, yeah, of course, in an evolutionary sense, it's very clear, very simple, but in an even deeper spiritual sense, it's because this part of us that is awareness is always constantly speaking to us, perhaps through emotions in one sense. And if something doesn't feel right, some people might say that's your intuition talking. That is your soul speaking to you, that maybe you start investigating, looking within and seeing where you can make a change to feel more in unity, to feel more in harmony with yourself. There's so much going on in the world that is making us, on the one hand, question everything, but on the other hand, start to go in and see, okay, why do these things feel like out of harmony with the Tao, with the flow of things?
On a certain level, that also applies to the good things that happen to us.
Unfortunately, but yeah.
That why are we attached to the good things that happen to us? And as you were saying, why do we want to move away from the unpleasant things that happen to us? So on a high, you could say a more advanced level of understanding, a soul will be not attached to either the good or the bad things that happen, because they're all on the material level, which means they have a beginning, they have an end. Just like we don't search out unpleasant experiences, but they come, they happen. So it's the same thing with good, so-called good material experiences. They will also come unasked for. So the real position of the soul is to be detached from either material happiness or material distress, and be experiencing things on an entirely different level, where everything, even the so-called distress, is an aspect of Ananda.
That's a hard pill to swallow, right?
That is, but you kind of raise things up to that level.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to live life, the emotional part of life. I have a moon in Scorpio. We are in Scorpio sun season also, so especially these days I'm very like experiencing the emotional aspect very strongly. And yeah, I guess that's why these kind of questions are popping up in my heart and in my mind.
Yeah.
And there is this, you have more experience, many more years on your spiritual path. So you definitely you've already shared a lot of wisdom and great insights. But let me see if I can ask something, if I can find the words. It seems sometimes, no, it doesn't seem, but there is this perception, you know, of kind of the soul, as you were saying, it's on a different level, just witnessing whatever is happening, unattached, uh, sort of uninvolved. But then again, on this plane, there is desire, there is, you know, from the basic thing of, okay, you touch fire, you touch something that's hot, the hand automatically goes out. So there is this knowing of wants and desires and things that one should steer away from. And then there is the desires of the body and of the mind and of the heart, and how to align all of this with this knowing that whatever is happening, you can be transcendent to all of that. In fact, you are transcendent to that all the time, but you get lost, or the human aspect of us gets lost in the thing, because it's like this extremely realistic virtual reality that we're experiencing down here, right?
That's very interesting that you mentioned the virtual reality, because yes, that's exactly what it is, you know, according to the Vedic cosmology, that we have an existence apart from this. But when you enter a virtual reality world, you identify with a character in that virtual reality. You know, if you know, they have something called avatars, which is your personal presence in a virtual world, and you identify with that character, and you experience everything through the eyes of that character in the virtual world. But really, you have a separate existence, and it's almost like you become absorbed in the virtual reality to the extent that you forget your real existence. It's almost like someone has to enter that virtual reality and say, you know, like say if a young person, you know, they're absorbed in some virtual reality, and then their mother wants them to come home for dinner or something like that. You know, maybe there could be some feature of the virtual reality system that the image of the mother could appear on his screen or in his headset or whatever, and say, son, it's time to come home for dinner. Get out of the virtual reality. So yeah, I think we are being asked to do that. And as you mentioned, desire is a feature of our existence. We have different desires that we want to fulfill, and we have a body that we try to use to fulfill our desires, a body and a mind. And when we're identifying with the virtual reality version of ourselves, you know, the virtual body, the virtual mind and intelligence, you know, artificial intelligence, sometimes they call it, then what we, according to the system of Bhakti Yoga, what one should do is use the talents and abilities that one has in this particular body for a higher spiritual purpose, not to satisfy oneself, but to dovetail our desires with God's desires, you could say. So that would mean the first step to waking up to the real identity will be to use the body that we identify with, use the mind and intelligence that we identify with for a higher spiritual purpose. Just like in my case, I had some talent as a researcher, a writer, a speaker. So I could use it just for my own satisfaction. I could work in an advertising company, trying to persuade people to buy cars, for example. I could be doing that, or I could be working for a government to carry out the purposes of a government. I could be speaking about that, writing about that, researching that. But I'm using my intelligence, my mind, my body to write, speak, and research for a higher spiritual purpose. And in doing that, I'm beginning to understand, maybe too slowly, that I have an identity that's separate from the body that I presently occupy, the mind and intelligence that I have at the present moment. Like we're always saying, my mind, my intelligence, my body. The question is, who is the I that has temporarily, for the moment, this mind, this intelligence, this body? So that's the goal of life, as far as I see it, to understand who that I really is.
Yeah, like going from what you're saying reminds me, not my will, but thy will, O Lord, correct? As in, I think that's the Bible, correct?
Yeah, and the amazing thing is that if you do that, you feel more satisfaction and pleasure and happiness than if you were trying to satisfy yourselves.
Right. Yeah.
So
like,
go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Like if you were with the virtual reality metaphor we were using, if you were going into the virtual world for a reason, and then you get in, you forget that reason, but in some way you start asking the player, please help me complete the mission you brought me here for, you got into this game for, and the player was given that permission from the character, then you would definitely start feeling more satisfaction, because you would be exactly right, aligning with the mission of your truer self, rather than the one illusory self that is just like the suit of, if you were diving deep in the water, you put the suit on, and the suit started having its own wants and desires, and the diver wasn't able to like get the rock from the bottom of the ocean, or whatever that it actually wanted to, or see whatever it, and learn whatever it wanted to. And if you, please comment on this, of course, but if you could, like, what are like practices or more like, yeah, practical things that have helped you in aligning with this purpose, or in finding your work, the work that you have been doing and are doing, finding how it can align with the higher purpose of God. I think it's so amazing. The path that you're on talks so much about you not being the doer, but actually Krishna or God or the universe being really the one who is doing, the one who is getting the satisfaction. So how to align our intentions so as to work and use this very rich incarnation that we have to complete a piece of the intention of God itself.
Mm. Well, my practice is technically called bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion. And yoga is a Sanskrit word. It actually means to connect. You know, if things are linked together, they're in yoga, they have connection. So the connection of the soul with the Supreme Soul is the connection that I'm trying to develop and come to understand and realize. And that only works if, again, it goes back to something we were discussing in the other part of the podcast, namely the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, the idea that God is simultaneously one and different from his expansions. And I consider, and our tradition teaches, we are all part of God, but we're different at the same time. We're one with and different from God. And that's important because if we were simply different, totally different from God, then there's no connection. You're just different categories of beings, and there's no possibility of establishing relationship.
Which kind of seems the exoteric understanding of like classic religions, right? Like God is up there and I am down here. There is no connection, right?
No connection. If simultaneously oneness is there, then there's relationship. There's the possibility of connection. And the problem is we've utilized our position of difference to try to experience and enjoy things separately, independently, to cut off the oneness and simply emphasize the difference. And the unfortunate fact is that we can never, according to the Bhakti teachings, we can never really become happy in that selfish way. So the real position is to keep one's position of independence, but voluntarily cooperate in loving devotion with the Supreme Soul. Recognize there's the oneness there is that connection, and then one can experience a relationship, and that relationship is very satisfying. It's on the platform of Sat Chit Ananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss, Ananda. So what I'm trying to do is reconnect with that oneness with God in purpose, that I should, as an independent, different personality from God, voluntarily enter into. So that's, you could say, why I use my talents, abilities, my body, my mind, my words in doing something that is connected somehow with that higher spiritual nature. And you were asking about techniques that help one do that. Meditation is one. Every day I spend some time meditating on mantras that are related to Krishna. And another way to connect oneself, another practical thing is in terms of diet, eating things that don't involve violence and suffering to other living things. So that's something that one can do. Spending some time contemplating the teachings of one's tradition is something one can do. If one has a tendency to travel, visit the sacred places connected with one's tradition. I do that, or I did it until travel stopped to India. I would visit sacred places in India. But as I said, I've also visited other sacred places to Christianity, to Buddhism, to other faiths as well, because I get something from visiting those places. So those are some practical things one can do.
That is beautiful. And also, so what I'm getting is kind of not so much a thing of changing what you're doing in order to be in alignment with the Supreme Soul, but because you're doing work which is very, very specific, very, very unique, and how you've been able to use this specific work to develop further your connection and your yoga with your higher self. That is amazing. And sometimes people might feel, okay, maybe I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, so I should change my path, or I should change what I'm doing, and in order to, but I'm hearing from you that you can continue doing whatever it is you're doing, but what could be added into the equation is a Krishna consciousness, a being, correct,
change
being,
of consciousness.
Can you say something more about that?
Yeah, it's a change in consciousness. I in my work, I could get misled or distracted by concentrating on the purely material aspect of what I do. Because, okay, I'm researching, I'm looking into different texts, I'm using the information I find there to write books. I go to archaeology conferences, I present papers. Now, in my inner self, I'm always kind of aware that what I'm doing is I'm representing a point of view that's expressed in the Puranas, which are, the cosmological and historical writings of ancient India. And they mention this idea of extreme human antiquity. They have accounts of human populations that existed on this earth millions of years ago. So in my mind, what I'm doing is connected with that. And those literatures, they come ultimately from Krishna. So I'm internally, that's what I see myself doing. But I could become distracted and think, well, now my purpose should be to become a famous archaeologist and, forget about the spiritual purpose of why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's almost, for me, it's like almost like being like in police work. Sometimes to catch the criminals, they have to make a police person go what they call undercover. And so he's behaving in such a way that the people around him think, okay, he's one of us. But he's actually there for a different purpose. But he could become distracted and become really one of the criminals. And usually at that time they pull him out. Say, no, you're going over to the dark side. We've got to get you out of there. So
that's a great analogy. As you were speaking, what I was receiving is that you are, or we are striving also to become. I got this like image of a spiritual ambassador to Krishna, for example, or to whatever anybody calls their understanding of God, right? A spiritual ambassador. So bringing that over here.
Yeah, it's it's a very special kind of outreach, you could say, that I'm doing, but it's all comes under the heading of bhakti yoga, using one's talents and abilities to interest people in the Vedic literature as a source of knowledge, whether it's or at least offer it to them as an alternative, a spiritual alternative. But if they want to follow it further, then let them. But it's it really is kind of interesting how these things work. So I don't often get questions like this. For many questions, I've heard them 1,000 times before, and I have my little answers that I've given 1,000 times before. So you're a very unique interviewer. You're digging into things that most interviewers stay away from.
Well, thank you for mentioning it. On the one hand, it's just natural for me to want to explore these areas. I've seen many interviews with you, and I've one of the things that has always caught my attention from them or from you is precisely the path that you walk spiritually, and I've always been very curious about how that interface conjoins or works with the work that you're doing. And I'm in my own spiritual in my own spiritual path, and I am also in this search or in this attempt to become a spiritual ambassador or an undercover cop with my own work. And I sometimes, being younger, I'm still or just starting to cross. No, what's this called? You step. I'm like stepping on the same stone several times and hitting my head against the wall several times. And I'm very interested in learning how people with more experience have dealt with that. And you just did this thing. It's a changing consciousness, and that's so perfect. It's many times we get lost in seeing the work that we're doing, the fruits of the work. And this is just amazing how before we started this second hour, a few moments before you came back, I still had the Gita beside me, so I said, okay, I'll I'll just bibliomance whatever and see what comes up. I don't remember exactly the verse now, but it was this one talking about it's in Spanish, so I would have to kind of translate the words,
Yeah.
but it's this idea of the fruits of our work and how wise people do the same thing, but without the search for the fruit of the action. And many times we get lost in this thing of, okay, I am doing this, I need to get a particular something from this, which can be very selfish or sometimes not so selfish, but can have a kind of selfish root. You know, you want to bring money to your home so you can feed your family. You want to, which are noble causes, but what is the deeper root cause of that? And if we can transmute that deeper thing and gift it to God for God's pleasure, we might just unlock the thing, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, there's selfishness and then there's extended selfishness. Uh, Selfishness means everything just for me. And extended selfishness is everything for my family, everything for my country, everything for my species. So that's all in the platform of selfishness. And anything one does on that platform will generate reactions, either good or bad. You know, if one does good things, then good things will come. You know, good karma, they say. You do bad things, then bad things will come. And it's just a endless cycle of action and reaction. But yeah, so that's called karma. And the platform of bhakti is akarma. If one is acting in terms of the soul's spiritual relationship with the Supreme Soul, it generates no karma. It's all just activity, enjoyable activity. It's not, yeah, if one is on the platform of karma, one has to keep a material body, take another birth and another birth and another birth in this world. And so you can get the results of your good karma, which manifest in terms of taking birth in a nice family, having opportunities for enjoyment, for achieving fame and profit and adoration, to be adored by people on the material level, to achieve wealth and fame and distinction. And the bad karma comes back in terms of all kinds of, I don't have to list all the bad things that can happen to people. They can lose their political position, they can lose their fame, they can become involved in criminal proceedings, go to jail. You know, so many things can happen on that level. But whether it's the good or the bad, it's still on the platform of the material mind and body, which are temporary. That's one of the messages of the Gita.
Yeah, and it's a very important message. This has been such a wonderful 2 hours. I'm very thankful for your time. I also want to respect that I know you have other commitments. So this second hour flew by. And
it did, didn't it?
it did. So thank you again so much for being here, for everything that you've shared. I know that whoever reaches this, and I am praying for this message to reach the right eyes and the right ears of somebody who is in need to listen to this message and to this understanding and interpretation and this wisdom that Michael Cremo has been sharing with us. So yeah, one more time, thank you to everybody that's been watching. I'm again extremely grateful for this opportunity. Michael, I wish we can do this again very soon. I had a great time. I hope you did too.
Okay, you know my publicist, Lori, so whenever you're ready, you can get back in touch with her and she'll set up something.
Awesome, that's amazing. So once again, you can find more about Michael on his website, mcremo, MCREMO, correct, .com.
Yes.
Yeah, mcremo. And yeah, I'm inviting everyone to just reflect on a very deep way, reflect on the reasons behind the activities that you're involved in. See very honestly and very deeply how much you're opening the door to the universe solving your problems for you, and how much you're not opening that door and generating more confusion and more suffering for yourself. Right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity to have this exchange with you. And I wish all your viewers all over the world much success in coming to the real purpose of human life.
Thank you. Namaste and Hare Krishna, Michael.
Namaste, Hare Krishna.
We will see you guys next time or in our next episode. And thank you so much for your support on Patreon. Well, nothing else to add. Bye-bye and thank you.